Christians in Motion.
This is one of those verses that I feel gets taken straight out of context sometimes, you know?
What now? But when they call themselves a Christian page and they're posting things that completely go against the Bible, that's where I take issue.
This is not what that verse is saying at all.
I swear, nobody ever wants to talk to me until I sit down to record something, or I'm driving my car, or I'm like with other people. Like if I'm just sitting at home with nothing to do, my phone doesn't ring, nobody wants to talk to me. But if I actually like don't want my phone to be going off, that's when it's like dinging like crazy. Just ba-ding, ba-ding, ba-ding. What can you do? Welcome back to the Christians in Motion podcast. My name is Kristen, and we are on episode 20 of this podcast. Thank you for tuning in and stopping by. I am glad that you are here. Last week, there was not a podcast. You were not imagining things. Did you hear it? I don't know if you could hear it through the mic, but my phone just dinged. It just dinged again. See, I'm not making this up. What the heck was it? See, it's distracting. I mean, I guess I could put my phone on silent. That would make it a little bit easier. What was I talking about? See, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. Last week, there went my phone. There was not a podcast. You were not imagining things. It's been... we just had some stuff going on, you know, family stuff. I did a vlog on it. If you want, you can go to our website, christiansmotion.org, and I think the most recent post is that vlog if you want to know what's going on. But yeah, I wasn't able, like I literally did not have the time last week to get it done. So it didn't get done, and I don't feel bad about it. I just care less and less. Like I want to be on a schedule. I want to be able to post every single Wednesday, but if I miss a Wednesday, I'm not going to be like crying my eyes out. Like I sometimes see those content creators that they have like a scheduled upload day, and then they're like really, really upset with themselves if their video goes up a day late or something. I'm like, you know, it's nice to be on a schedule because it keeps you focused, but if I have to miss a week or if I upload late, I'm like, life happens. But anyway, thank you all for being here. So these past couple days, I just like, it was really weird. Like one after another, I just had these reminders that people that I may not think are listening to me are actually listening to me. Like on my blog, like I have people like message me or comment me, and this has all happened like very, very recently, saying, "Oh, I read that blog you wrote about blah, blah, blah. It was really good." And I had no idea that they read it. And they bring it up later. And I had another friend tell me that like he listens to my podcast every single week. And it was really interesting to me to know that there are people that are actually listening to the things I say on this podcast, or watching the videos that I make, or, you know, reading the blogs that I write that I didn't know were tuning in, right? Because here's the thing, on my end, I don't know who reads stuff. Like I can see how many people have viewed something, or how much, you know, traffic a certain post is getting. I can see like those analytic kind of things, but it doesn't tell me specifically, like, Jane Smith has read this blog post. Because, I mean, can you imagine the notifications on stuff? It would be crazy. So unless somebody leaves a comment, I don't know. But just, it was really, really weird, like, how many people I just became aware were actually tuning into the stuff I had to say and were considering what I had to say. It was just very, very interesting. And I was like, that's a good reminder, because somebody is always listening. You may not realize it, but somebody is always listening. And especially, you know, I have 2 children. And if you have kids, you know, you will hear your kids repeat you word for word, especially when kids do like their manipulative play. If they're playing with dolls, or they're playing house, or they're playing, you know, whatever, you'll hear them like repeat your words exactly. And it's a little frightening. And let me just tell y'all, back a few years ago, I was maybe 19, 20. I was fairly young. I was doing the music at this church. It was a recent church plant. They didn't have a worship leader yet. I eventually stepped into that role, but at the time I was just kind of doing music until they found somebody, but I was I was the person to be found, I guess. But I was doing the music, and one day after church, we would always kind of hang out after church. A lot of times we'd, get lunch and stuff and hang out. And one of the guys from church, he just came up to me and he was like, "Hey, can I pick your brain about something?" I was like, "Sure." And he started asking me all these questions about like theology and different scriptures and how I interpret stuff and blah, blah, blah. And so, I sat and talked with him and I was like, "Well, I believe this and I believe that. And I think scripture's saying that." And, I kind of gave him my thoughts on stuff. And he's like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And I thought he was just kind of like wanting an extra perspective or whatever. But then I swear to you, maybe 2 weeks later, I heard him talking to another person at church, and I heard him repeat the words that I had said, like word for word, like copy and pasted. And that was terrifying to me. I'm like, whoa, he took the words that I said so seriously that he almost like accepted them as his own thoughts. And that sounds very like prideful, but that's why it was so terrifying to me that he really believed what I had to say and thought that my words were good enough to repeat himself. And as a very, very young adult, I was like, oh, I don't like that. And it is very terrifying because when people are listening, then all of a sudden you do have to be very careful with what you say. And, my mom has said that too. She always says, you're a leader if somebody's following you. And she's like, even if it's your kids, even if it's just your kids, it's very scary to know that there are people who really are looking up to you and they really are tuning in to every word you say. And that, with that position, being in that position where people are listening to you, I do believe that there's a certain level of responsibility that comes with that. Now, here's the other thing too. I feel like I'm at a weird age. I'm in my late 20s, and I feel like this is a very weird place to be because, recently I was at a family event, and one of my cousins said to me, he's like, "You realize, Kristen, we're not the kids anymore." He's like, "There's this new generation of kids in our family." And he's like, "We're the grown-ups now. We're not the kids anymore." I was like, ew, you're right. Because like with my cousins and stuff, it's like, we were the kids and everyone treated us like kids. And that's just, even when we were older, we were teenagers, we weren't babies anymore. We were still the kids. But now there's this new generation of children. And it's like, oh, like I'm in my late 20s. My cousins are in their 30s. My sister's in her early 20s. It's like, oh, we're grown-ups now. And that's a very weird place to be because it's like, I feel like people don't view me as like a real adult yet. Because I'm still in my 20s, so I feel like people still see me as like a youngin'. And I don't think people are going to view me as like this like wise lady that they're going to come to. Like people aren't going to be in a crisis and be like, "Oh, let's call Kristen, she'll know what to do." But at the same time, they're also not going to make excuses for me like, "Oh, she's just a kid." And so it's like this weird place to be where it's like I'm an adult and people expect me to act like an adult, but it's like I'm not I'm not very wise yet. And so it's like it's a weird place to be. And I like in the movie Fried Green Tomatoes, I feel like I'm too old to be young and too young to be old. And I'm just like in this weird place. But being in that position, that's the thing. Like I'm still very much so looking up to people and listening to them. But at the same time, I'm having people look up to me and listen to me. And I don't mean that to be prideful. Like everybody is just like so amazed by everything I say because I'm just so wonderful. That's something that I take very seriously. Like, and that was just a realization that I came to. Like, honestly, I didn't think anyone actually gave, like I didn't really think anyone was listening to what I had to say. I thought a few people downloaded my podcast because, I was their friends. I didn't think that there were actually people that were reading and listening to my content because they genuinely were interested in what I had to say. That was a newsflash to me. So I promise you, this is not coming from a prideful place. This is like a mini epiphany, like, oh, okay. So within the church, we talk about mentorship sometimes. And when you realize you're in that position where, you are a little bit older and people are a little, I sounded like a pirate there, are a little bit more likely to listen to you, that really does give you an opportunity. It can be a little bit terrifying, but it really is an opportunity. And I think perhaps that's something we should be doing in the church. There's the one verse in Titus 2. It's 2 verses, actually, that says, older women likewise are to be reverent in their behavior, not malicious gossips, nor enslaved to much wine. Are you listening, ladies? Teaching what is good, so that they may encourage the young women to love their husbands, to love their children. So, okay, sorry, I really need to put my phone on silent. It is just dinging away. See, I'm not making this up, that anytime I sit down to record, ba-ding, 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 everybody wants to talk to Kristen. Okay, I'm focused. But yeah, so we have this verse in Titus 2, and I really love this verse, that it's saying, like, you have these older women in the church, let them mentor the younger women and really build them up. And I can tell you, I'm going to brag on my grandma here for a little bit. My grandma takes that very, very seriously. She really does a good job at investing in the younger women in her life and in her church. She really takes that seriously, and she does a good job. My grandma's a very, very supportive and loving and nurturing and wise person. I love my grandma. That's grandma, not mama. Mama's the one who recently passed away. We call my grandma on my dad's side mama, my grandma on my mom's side grandma. Okay, just keep those straight. But anyway, so the whole thing with, like, the older people helping the younger people, that really was just kind of like a sidebar. But I think it is something that we should focus on a little bit more. The church I grew up in, actually, sorry, let me say that again because I got tongue-tied. The church that I grew up in, actually, see, I talk too fast. That's a Pennsylvania thing. We talk really, really fast, and then we stumble over our words. Anyway, so the church that I grew up in, which that's not even correct. The church in which I grew up, oh my gosh, focus, Kristen, crying out loud. We had what was called accountability partners, and that was something that we did where you would just kind of have these, I mean, it was kind of weird because, like, the whole church should be close-knit, but that's another rant. But just, like, having somebody in your life that's kind of keeping up with you, just really keeping tabs, like making sure, like, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like, you're on track. I don't know. I mean, that's something I think we need to do a better job of in the church, frankly. Like, I don't think we really do disciple one another well. I don't think we mentor one another well. As a matter of fact, like, I just don't think churches are as close-knit as they should be, but that's another rant for another day. But so that really was kind of just like a sidebar. So getting back to the whole everybody, like, having people listening to you thing. So this was kind of like an eye-opener for me, that even if it's a handful of people, when there are people that are listening to you, that's something that you should take seriously. Now, as a Christian, I would say, okay, if people are listening to me, then I need to point them to Christ. If they're listening to me, then my words should point them to Christ. Like I picture like a mirror. You look at me, and then I'm going to just point your attention to Christ. Because if my goal is to glorify God, if people are listening to me, then that's the message they should be getting, right? So I shouldn't view this as like people are listening to me, so I can just continue to spout my ideas and my thoughts and my agendas. No, I should point them to Christ. If even a handful of people are going to listen, that should be my goal, right? To point them to Christ. And sometimes I don't think people think in those terms. Like, we always get really excited when we develop an audience. And because it's exciting, but ultimately, whether you have 100 people or 500 people or 10 million people listening to you, point them to Christ. Because one person, 10 people, 1,000 people, they all need to be pointed to Christ, right? But additionally, I also think about, not just with my words, but with my actions, if people are listening to me and looking at me and they know that I am a Christian, what do they see? What are they hearing? And it's one of those things where we don't want to be fake. We don't want to just like put on that persona of like, I'm a happy Christian that never gets upset ever. But at the same time, we should realize that we can't take a break from being a disciple. It's not like we can behave one way when we're at church and then behave another way on Facebook or out and about in public. Like, we need to be glorifying God all the time. Like, we don't take a break from it. And if we are taking a break from it, if we're acting one way at church and then another way when we're out and about or online or whatever, then I think we're missing the point, right? Hey, I don't know. I don't know if like God is in this podcast, but that sounded weird. Of course God is in this podcast because God is everywhere and my goal is to glorify him. That sounded weird. But I don't know if like the things that have been happening to me these past few weeks like have just kind of led to this episode, because this really was like a spur of the moment kind of thing. But I also had a moment today where me and a few of my friends that are all Christians, we were just being like totally and completely goofy online. Like, we were just joking around about silly stuff and just having a good time and laughing. And like some of the conversations, like I was literally like laughing out loud. It was so funny. And I don't know why, I just had this thought. I'm like, I wish that this was the side of us that more non-Christians got to see. I wish they got to see the side of us where we are just really joyful and thankful for our lives. And we enjoy talking to other believers. We love each other. We support each other. We have a good time with one another. I wish they got to see that more. But then I thought, why don't they see that more? Why don't they see this side of Christians where it's like, we're filled with the joy of the Lord and we're joyful all the time. And we are enjoying our lives because our lives glorify God. That's the purpose of our lives, is to glorify God. And we find joy in that. Why don't they see that side of us more? And so again, bringing this back to the whole, remember, somebody is always listening. Somebody is always watching. So you have, again, I'm not saying act the right way. I'm saying aim to be the right way. Don't just act joyful, be joyful. Don't just act kind, be kind. Don't just act patient, be patient. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm picking up? You see what I'm throwing down? Okay. Jeez, it's late. And that's what happens when I do podcasts late at night. So as we come to the end of this podcast, this is going to be a short one this week. You know, our podcasts are all over the place. We have those short podcasts that are like, 15, 20 minutes. And then we have ones that are like over an hour, and then everything in between. You never know what you're going to get week to week. But as we start to come to a close, I wanted to go to Matthew 5, where it talks about salt and light. And I just wanted to read that to y'all. Okay, so the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, beginning in verse 13, it says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? Is it no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet?" Verse 14, and this is my favorite part. "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven." And that's kind of what I was trying to say in the beginning of this episode. we do need to understand, not just me, not just you, dear listener, but all of us need to understand that people are looking at us. People are looking at Christians, and they're watching and they're listening. And people, and I mean, I hear, non-Christians do it all the time. Like, well, if this is what Christians represent, then I don't want anything to do with it. People are seeing us. And what do they see when they look at us? They should see Christ. But are they? And so that's what I think, like, the whole, let your light shine. Like, people should be able to see Christ when they look at us. If we are aiming to follow him and to be like him, should people not be pointed to him when they see us? And again, it's of course, people, there are people who just, they do not have ears to hear. They do not have eyes to see, and they are just hardened to the truth. But at the same time, are we pointing them to the truth? Are we living in such a way that people can see, like, that our lives are different, our marriages are different, our relationships are different? That's why I brought up that whole thing with goofing around with my brothers and sisters on the Book of Faces, because I'm like, it was just, we were having fun. And I think so often people think Christians are all stuck up and boring and blah blah blah, but it's not true. We're awesome. We're super fun. Just ask anyone. No, just kidding. But yeah, I wanted to just kind of encourage you in that way this week to remember that you may not realize it, but somebody is listening to what you have to say. And especially if you do wear your faith on your sleeve and people know that you're a Christian, then they're really going to be zeroing in on you. They're watching, they're paying attention. So, just remember that. Because it was a huge eye opener for me. Like, I really need to make sure that I'm not just pretending to be a Christian. Because sometimes we can be bad about that. Because it's very easy, like, anonymity. It's an illusion. It's a total illusion. It's very easy to think, okay, well, I can kind of let my hair down and let loose and whatever, and just not really care because no one's really listening right now. You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. Because, like I keep saying, somebody is listening. Big Brother is listening. Big Brother's probably listening to this conversation right now. Hello, government. Taxation is theft. Quit taking my money. Oh, gosh. And there goes my follower count. Just kidding. But probably. Oh my gosh, I need sleep. But yeah, like I said, short episode this week. I just really wanted to kind of encourage you guys in that way to just remember that you do need to represent Christ everywhere you go. And just be careful. And again, it's not to say that you're not ever going to make a mistake, but just be aware that people do watch us and they do listen. So just be careful. Aim to be like Christ. That's it. I mean, that could honestly just sum up the whole podcast. Aim to be like Christ. Well, that's it. That's all I have for you guys this week. Thank you for tuning in once again. Be sure to check out our website, christiansinmotion.org. I have a really fun vlog coming soon. And if you would like to help us keep doing what we're doing, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It is patreon.com/christiansinmotion. You can pledge $1 or $2 or $5 or $10 or $1 million a month. $1 million a month. I don't think that's going to happen. That might be reaching a little bit. But $1 a month, I think that's doable. And we would definitely appreciate that. That would help us out a lot. So please consider it if you like what we're doing here. So thank y'all, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye-bye.